Hey everyone, Rin here, and thank you for coming. And tonight we're going to be taking a deeper look at the latest Marvel series to arrive on Disney+. Here are my thoughts on episode 4 of Moon Knight. Welcome back everyone, and yes, we have finally crossed the halfway point of the Moon Knight run. Last week's episode 3 was a decent enough installment, but this week episode 4 shot the show's trajectory right back up to the level we'd gotten used to in episodes 1 and 2. We came in knowing that Khonshu has now been imprisoned in stone, and Harrow is still on the loose, nearing the release of Ammit. Layla and Steven are without aid now and must complete the journey somehow without Steven or Marc having the godly aid of Khonshu and his suit. I love how the episode began, showing us all of the gods that have been in prison, which just teases us with all of the lore and story that we don't know and could still learn later at some point. The dynamic between Layla and Steven also continued to flourish in this episode, as Marc is once again denied the body, and we even see Steven get a kiss.
Marc's trying to protect you from Khonshu. That's why he's been pushing you away.
On the way to Ammit's tomb, we see Steven and Layla pass a goat, which seems like a reference to the Egyptian god Khnum, who is the god of the source of the Nile and is closely associated with procreation and water, which makes sense as they're walking along a riverbed. And the other cool thing here is that we find out Ammit's tomb is actually a maze in the shape of the Eye of Horus, which represented essentially protection in the afterlife, which would be against Ammit as she was hid in the midst of it. In this episode, we also got the chance to see a bit of the horror element it would seem Marvel is edging closer and closer to with the coming phase, as we also know as of now that Doctor Strange 2 will have a fair amount of horror to it. Layla and Steven pursue Harrow and end up in quite the heroine position as they are happened upon by a resurrected god that is clearly a threat of a new kind. The show has done a fantastic job, in my opinion, of really showing us how capable Layla is, because she handles each and every situation she lands in with grace and style, if I must say so myself. Thus far, I have really enjoyed both Oscar Isaac and Ethan Hawke's individual contributions. Harrow really stirred the pot this episode, finally dishing the dirt to Layla that we had all pretty much begun to assume, about Marc having something to do with her father's death, which we find out he's loosely responsible for, as he didn't kill him, but he did bring his partner to her father's doorstep, who eventually did. This partner is ultimately Bushman in the comics, but thus far in the show, it seems that portion of the comics hasn't been followed through on. It was very cool to find out that the pharaoh that built the tomb was in fact Alexander the Great. Harrow mentioned earlier in the series that Ammit's former avatar rebelled against her and helped to entomb her, so we now know that it was Alexander himself that did this over 2,000 years ago when he found out what Ammit was up to in terms of judging the entire MCU.
I think we're looking at the long-lost tomb of Alexander the Great.
Steven finally finds what everyone has been searching for, the funerary Ushtabi that Ammit is bound to, beating Harrow and his people there by identifying the right path to take from the Eye of Horus being the tongue, and right when he removes Ammit's Ushtabi from Alexander's mummified throat, we see Layla arrive and we already know what she's going to want to talk about at the absolute worst time. This was obviously all planned by Harrow. He knew Layla would find Steven and confront him about her father, thus slowing their progress and giving him and his guys the time to pull up on them, which is exactly what happens, which was very frustrating for me, because when Marc surfaces, I was 100% with him. Like, hey, let's go, we can talk about this later, I promise, but we got the figurine, let's skedaddle. Unfortunately though, that's not what happens and they are in fact found. What's unclear at this point is if Marc was able to pass the Ushtabi off to Layla or not, or if when he is shot by Harrow, if the Uchtabi is still on his person, which I assume Arthur would then just take. For me, my favorite part of the episode was definitely the portion inside of the mental hospital, as I've been awaiting these scenes since we started the series. I think we're seeing Marc working through his mental issues within his own headspace, much like Khonshu aided him with doing in the comics in a similar manner. We saw early shots of Marc in the mental hospital in the early releases and teasers, and it left many of us wondering just what the context would be to these, and now we know. It was seen that after being shot by Harrow, Marc awakes to find his reality is actually that of a mental hospital, and we see all of the various characters as other patients and employees. What's happening here at the end of the episode is a lot to take in. The whole mental hospital is actually right out of the comic book run, where Marc Spector basically got so twisted up in his head that he ends up in a mental hospital, and he is unsure of if Moon Knight is even real or not, or if he just dreamt it all up. So the show is doing something similar to that, in that we're seeing things from his life incorporated into this that add to that confusion, such as his goldfish from earlier in the series, Egyptian drawings, and we even see Jacob Lockley's buddy Crowley as well, who the show is giving us again here without his gold performance makeup, along with his boss from the museum as well. We also get the police officers that originally showed up and took him to Harrow here as guards. The interaction with Harrow was interesting, as we continue to see things here in his office that we've seen before, and it looks like his office here resembles the lair we saw Harrow in the first episode. Essentially, this is Marc's mind projecting Harrow into this space, and not something Harrow is actually doing and orchestrating himself. And once Marc runs out on Harrow, we also get another huge nod to the fact that there is a third personality, as once Marc and Steven reunite and hug, they run by another room with a sarcophagus bumping around with life, much like Steven's was, that they both just ignore and don't even mention, which I found interesting, because once again we're seeing them not even acknowledge the possibility that there is another personality outside of the two of them. So I'm pretty sure the person trying to get out of the sarcophagus and the person that killed those people last week will turn out to be Jake Lockley from the comics. We don't get to dwell on this much before we're then treated to the arrival of what I believe to be the Egyptian god Tyrett, who was the protective ancient Egyptian goddess of childbirth and fertility with the head of a hippo, which is a cool callback because we actually saw Steven reference this particular god back in episode 1 at the museum. I do believe that much like Khonshu, Marc and Steven are only seeing Tyrett because people can only see the Egyptian gods in their heads due to them existing in their pocket dimension, as we discussed. So I expect that we'll see Tyrett help Marc and Steven along and explain to them what all is going on and help them get through this crisis they're experiencing. This just reinforces that there are other friendly gods out there who do like and are willing to help Khonshu. In closing, this episode reignited the spark that I think episode 3 stalled a bit. I really enjoyed the back and forth dialogue between Marc and Steven throughout this installment, and having Layla present as well presented its own sorts of problems. And now that Layla knows that Marc was present for her father's murder, we have no idea how she's going to react ultimately and just where that places their relationship. With Harrow having shot Marc, are we to assume that he now has the Ammit totem in his possession? And since it would seem we've entered an entirely new realm of existence within the show, next week can we expect we will be getting all or some of the answers to the many questions that we're now faced with. I will of course be continuing to cover all interesting works of theatrical content from the likes of Marvel, DC, and Star Wars, and films from all walks of life that I have the pleasure of watching. And if you feel so inclined, I would love to have you back here week in and week out to continue to cover it all with us. Again, guys, be sure to like, comment, and subscribe, and click that bell for notifications if you've enjoyed our content here tonight. Jump down in the comments and let me know your thoughts. And while you're at it, be sure to check out some of the other content here on the channel. All of the necessary links are listed here below for you to keep up with the coming content and shareables. Please be sure to follow me on all social media platforms.
or just the one you use most frequently. We are slowly but surely building a community here, and I would personally love for you to be a part of that. And last but not least, we have a merch store. So whether you see something you like or just simply want to support the channel, head on over to our shop and grab something, or grab everything. But again, thank you so much, guys and gals, for visiting here with us today. I really appreciate each and every view and minute of your time you've given us. There's loads of content we'll be sending your way, so I'll be seeing you. But for now, be blessed. And it was written.
Looking out across the nighttime, the city sleep inside. Yeah, hear her voice shake my window, sweet seducing inside. Yeah, send me out into the nighttime, for walls won't hold me tonight.